Welcome back to Leadership Blueprints, everybody. I'm your host, BJ Kraemer, and we are wrapping up our November DOD to AEC series where we are talking with folks that left active duty, figured out what they wanted to do, or are at least evolving themselves from leaders in the military to leaders outside of the military. And excited to have Joey Faye's buddy, Dan Bailey, join us. Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey, BJ, thank you for having me.
Great to we were talking a little bit before we jumped on, but great to meet you, great to connect, and excited to hear some of your lessons learned in the transition. So, talk to us about when you transition and what you're doing today to just get us started and people to understand kind of the timeline of. I think you're 2 or 3 years off active duty at this point, if I'm right.
Yeah, that's right. I left in July of 23, so a little bit past the 2 year mark. It came really quick. Um, Left the Navy Special Operations Community, EOD, the Explosive Ordnance Disposal Community, and I really didn't have an idea what I wanted to do, but I knew it was time to move on. The circumstances were such that, living away from my family or multiple tours away from my family was not in my plans. And coming from the academy, with Joey, it's command service, commitment, career service, and fulfilling that Naval Academy mission. And I was glad I had the opportunity to command. Having to leave the military, we made a decision. It was just what was in the best interest of our family at that point, and found an opportunity with Quanta Services, and now am operating as a client relationship manager on Quanta's behalf. I rep the Dominion Energy account, and I have found a lot of interest in learning something entirely new, meeting new people, going new places, and just understanding a new industry.
Yeah. Give us kind of the top line elevator pitch of who Quanta Services is.
Yeah, so Quanta Services is a industry leading infrastructure, solutions provider. They do construction. They have the largest labor force, craft labor force. So for Dominion, in this case, we would build transmission lines, power lines, distribution lines, anything underground. The variety of uh, energy industry infrastructure that goes all the way to data centers, that goes all the way to telecom, that goes all the way to in some cases, connections for other entities like nuclear, but not nuclear, wind, connections onshore. So we're right there with the solution to any utilities or, power company, municipalities, cooperatives. We're right there with the solutions they need to connect to the grid and to provide power.
Awesome. Let's go back a little bit. We're focusing in on DoD to AEC. We'll get to kind of your mindset with the transition, but let's go back in your career. What drew you to the Naval Academy back in the late '90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, so it's always good to go that far back. I actually grew up off 95, just north of Quantico. So my dad was a Marine, and he made the commitment. I remember going through high school. He said, "Hey, I'll do whatever you need to help you write these essays or to help you get yourself ready for the Naval Academy." And I remember going up to his office in Old Town and writing these essays and thinking I wasn't good enough. Thinking like, look at this, they want something published ready, and I submitted. I think I was a good candidate. I ended up going to the prep school with Joey.
Okay.
I took it. That was a route that was made available to me. I took it. I had a great time. Some of my best friends originated there in Newport, and they carried through to Annapolis and to this day. So I went to the Navy. I just didn't think the Marines were a right fit, but I found a community that I loved. I had a great career, and still in touch with great people today.
The EOD guys were high value to me. I was doing route clearance in Iraq in
Yeah.
04, 05. So we had a lot of Navy EOD attached to us at different periods. So not a not a mission for the faint of heart, that's for sure. I'm sure you got plenty of war stories.
Yeah, but I think the takeaway that I have told people to this day is, EOD was in a combat sense service support. Whether you're supporting Marines, whether you're supporting Navy SEALs, or you're supporting, in my case, I had the International Security Assistance Forces in Afghanistan. and we didn't even speak the same language. In any case, it's a support role. They needed to go somewhere. If there was an impediment, EOD up, EOD remove the impediment, continue the mission. So I think that's one of my major takeaways from this community is that we are an enabler, and certainly as a leader in any company, you have the opportunity to be an enabler, and to the degree that you want to be, to enable those folks to be successful. So, yeah,
it's interesting. I haven't used the terminology enabler much. I mean, engineers were the same doing route clearance.
absolutely.
We're either building stuff that missions can operate out of, or we're removing stuff's obstacles on the battlefield, or we're implementing obstacles on the battlefield. Um, but I think one of the themes that I've gotten a lot from military is as they transition off active duty into the private sector is leadership looks a little different because we don't have all these direct reports. We may not be in command of a huge unit, but we are getting to play a leadership role in enabling the business to happen. And you talk about a client service or a customer facing role where you're interacting on behalf of the organization. Maybe all the resources that are working for Dominion don't report directly to you, but you are there as the I think as the spokesperson and the figurehead and liaison between the resources that Quanta can provide them and the problem sets that the client is having. Um, how did you look at the transition? Well, first, am I getting that right? Like that is that your role, and how do you look at that role?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The relationships that I have with Dominion on behalf of Quanta Services are paramount to our success in business. They're paramount to our success when things don't go quite right. You know, how do we rebound and how do we continue on? Um, but that is absolutely right. I look at it almost like an accelerator. If I'm doing my job right, we're able to move faster, bring more value, and help the customer succeed in their projects and their goals. If I'm not doing it right, it's not, it just isn't running at the right speed. I have to do it well so that the men and women in the field, the various companies around the service territory for Dominion have the opportunity and the chance to succeed.
2 to 3 years in, how long did it take you to realize like, all right, this is how I create value in this role? And to really start taking ownership of like, I see where my role fits in, and I see how to get very um, responsible and feel mission oriented in like I think there's so many jobs out there where people wrestle with like, well, I'm just showing up to work. They're not thinking about what where their leverage is in creating value out there as part of a bigger mission. How long did it take you to wrestle with that?
You know, Quanta's a fast moving organization. It's a big organization, and we're not talking small projects in many cases. I remember standing up at one of these regional meetings, maybe a year in, and you don't see everybody every time, so oftentimes you're still introducing yourself. And
Yep.
I said something along the lines of, "Hey, I realize the the preciousness I have here of carrying your name and being your spokesperson to the company, speaking on your behalf, representing everything, not only you, Mr. Company president, but all your people are doing out here." And I think that kind of resonated with some folks, um, because it isn't just, oh, we missed that bid, or hey, we missed that timeline. It's we can't miss that timeline. We can't provide a bad bid on bad intel. Like, I I use my relationships to gain opportunities for these companies, and I want to give them the best information I can.
Extreme ownership, as Jocko would say.
100%, 100%. And if and I kind of want to put myself in their shoes. If some guy stands up and doesn't speak to that, like, I think that's what they want out of their link to the company, right? And it has served me well when engaging with Dominion, and I say, hey, I realize we didn't do well here. How about some feedback? Where could we do better? And
Yeah.
the easier that feedback comes, the more I feel that relationship is strengthened.
Yeah.
And,
That's
and,
great.
and then we're off to the next opportunity and reposition as needed.
All right. So we tapped a little bit into you knew it was time to get off active duty. It was the best thing for your family. What were the personal conversations you were having with yourself? What are some lessons you learned in your transition that maybe might serve other people going through the same thought process?
Yeah, I think one of the first ones that I had to had to realize was, where do I want to end up if I'm going to stay in the military? Do I see myself advancing, and to what point? And how do I? What will it take to get there? And I honestly didn't see myself, for a long time succeeding past command. Maybe there'd be an opportunity for a major command or something, but I knew I was kind of wearing out the family a little bit. And it's not that it can't be done. It's just in my circumstance, with my girls in high school and my son coming through middle school, I felt like I just wasn't going to be around. So I was having conversations at home about, how's this really going to work? Because you just can't continue to take your life at 2-year increments with a pay raise. Like, you just can't. And I felt, fulfilled with command and how command went, and the individuals I had an opportunity to work with, that I felt okay walking away. But that only happened because I really looked myself in the mirror and said, where do you think you're going to go here?
Yeah.
And is that what you want? And I quite honestly decided I wanted to try something new.
And how did you approach the market to figure out what, I mean, I remember thinking through it, and like for the first time in my life, I have optionality in what I can do.
Yeah.
It in some ways it was daunting because I had no idea where to start, and in other ways it was like the world is your oyster. You gotta pick a path. How did you start narrowing down where to focus, and really what you wanted out of the next career?
Yeah, I enrolled at the Honor Foundation. I was part of cohort 69 here, local campus in Virginia Beach, and really found a great organization. Went through the whole process. My wife was like, "Well, they're just going to give you like resume tips," and I said, "No, it's much more than that. It's huge. It's connectivity. It's self assessment was what it is. And I had done some self assessment in the Navy as part of like command screening and all that, but quite honestly, I don't know that I took it as serious as I took it when I did it with the Honor Foundation, because the stakes were so much higher. No. Really talk to yourself and understand what it is you think you're good at, and what should you be doing, and does that meet your goals? Where do
Yeah.
you want to be? So the Honor Foundation was very helpful for self reflection. I'm glad to always go back and support and talk to the folks that are going through. But I think, their program, the way it's designed to kind of get at what you're good at, and mock interviews and all that kind of stuff, where you have to force yourself to talk about yourself, which is the hardest thing to do for a military person, let alone a special operations person. Like, silent professional is kind of like out the window. They're like, no, it's time to speak up. And I found when I was forced to do that, I really started to level with folks. And I was telling, a classmate in a mock interview, like, who I was and what I was about. It was something you would never do, right? And it was when that person, that stranger in that class, said, "Hey, man, I think you really like to talk to people. Like, you really like to see what they're about, and maybe where the path is to success here." I said, "Okay, I'll take that." And then I started looking into that, and you know, getting into the client management area. I was just fortunate enough that the Honor Foundation had a local area trek in Virginia Beach. I missed that because I was somewhere else, but then I was able to go to the out of area trek, and that was in Houston, and Quanta was the last stop on that visit. So if you think about a bunch of special operators getting off a bus like it's college game day, and we roll into Quanta Services, and I remember the CEO, that's still a CEO, was like, "Hey, I'm a $20 billion company. I want to go to 40. Who's in?" Automatically, Dan Bailey's hand shoots in the air, like, I got to hear what this guy has to say, so let's go. And I got to talking to folks, and I was talking about my background, and somebody kind of relayed them they might have a place for me, and it worked out well that spring.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
2+ years in, what leadership lessons did you take from the military that either apply and have served you well, or you had to adjust a little bit because different environment, different stakes?
Yeah, I think above the environments, it's for me, it was never a leader, doesn't succeed by using force; they succeed by using example. And um, I felt the weight of my Navy affiliation on my back when I walked into Quanta Services. Very few veterans, maybe in the corporate ranks there, but a lot in the field, right?
Mm.
A lot of talented individuals operating in the field. And, um, you know, I, I, I enjoyed leveraging that, right? I had a story to tell. And that's what the Honor Foundation also said. Hey, when you walk in, like, you're one of one, here's your story, special operations, whatever. And it was just enjoyable to kind of find other veterans there, right, in those ranks, and and leverage those stories.
Yeah. Um, what are you hoping to accomplish in your second career now? What's the path forward? Obviously, being successful in the role that you're in, but do you have hopes of expanding that role? Where's your head right now?
Yeah, I think my head is honestly focused on my client Dominion and the challenges that may be present right now. I think evolving leadership on the civilian side is something I'm definitely interested in. And Quanta is again a large company. There are opportunities there, um, but I am focused on Dominion at this point. I don't have I don't have that 2 year increment path anymore. Right now, it is, hey, do right by your client, support your company, and continue enjoying life. I mean, it's quite honestly a wonderful setup here. My client is right there, nearby. I got great companies all around North Carolina, Kentucky, in the Northeast. Quanta's all over, so I get to meet all kinds of new folks all the time. And the moment I find out they have a capability I could use, I kind of bring them in the loop and say, hey, let's talk about this kind of solution. And that, to me, putting the deal together, has been what I enjoy the most.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Um, and you get to watch your family grow up and be stabilized geographically at kind
You
of
got
a
line of sight
leverage
on
point
my
of
kids
time.
still. Yeah. Line of sight matters a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Switching gears a little bit to some rapid fire questions. Any favorite books in your library? Could could
Yeah.
could have to do with the with leadership, the transition, or just a favorite.
Yeah, one of my favorites is a easy read. It's called Robert E. Lee on Leadership, and I love it. And it's about executive strategies, for leadership, and a little bit of a historian, not too deep, but I love how you can take some of those ideas and really bring them forward. Right. One of
Yeah.
my favorites was like, and it's just a Robert E. Lee saying about, I cannot consent. To allow someone to control others if they can't control themselves. I use that all the time. JOs. When I was in command, all the time, and I just said, hey, that's the expectation, because if you can keep yourself under control and demonstrate some self discipline, your subordinates are going to do the same thing, and we're going to be better off. Now, I
Yeah.
realize all the crazy stuff that happens all the time in the "Are you kidding me's," and I don't believe it, but that's just the basis for hey, I've taken people out of positions of leadership, and I put other junior folks in there because they haven't been able to demonstrate that self-control. Now, granted, his stakes were a little bit higher, but still, it matters, and so I think about that, and I reflect sometimes, and I'm like, am I in control of what I'm doing? Am I providing the right example? And though I don't have any direct reports anymore, you're right. I engage with companies. I represent a large company, and the impression I leave really matters.
Yeah. And I love what you said, that you're representing all those Navy folks that are in the field, that are that are veterans, and you might be the corporate representation of that capability and of that culture.
Yeah.
How much did the Quanta culture matter to you in the transition?
It mattered a ton, and I'll tell you, for me there was a bit of a correlation between you know having EOD technicians that are out there on the edge, hey, getting it done, whatever it
Mm,
takes, within reason, whatever it takes. Now I go over here and we don't have platoons anymore. We have crews of line workers, technicians. We got guys flying helicopters, hanging linemen out the bottom, out there on the edge. Go get it done within reason. You
Yeah.
know, um, and it can't be full speed all the time. There has to be some safety built in and all that. But nonetheless, you have folks that are out there trying to do their best to be successful.
Yeah.
Um, and putting themselves in harm's way. So there's a direct correlation there. I actually discussed that with my hiring official, and I said, look, I'm comfortable with this risk. I understand what it means to tell some guys to go diving or jumping or go play off the side of the building and they're doing some rappelling. Like, I sit comfortably in my office while they're doing that, knowing that they're trained, knowing that they respect the safety involved. And I've got to imagine that's kind of the same thing for the folks out in the field at 40 feet in the air on a tower or something.
Yeah. If you could have dinner with 3 people dead or alive, who would they be?
Oh, geez. Uh, let's see. I'd probably say the president would be one. I think the man moves at an incredible pace. And that is not partisan. That is just every day I wake up, he's in another country doing something.
He's got an engine.
An engine, exactly. And so anybody that has an engine like that, I want to associate with. I want to find out how you can do it. I mean, the amount of prep work required astounds me.
Yeah.
So I would say from that perspective, probably the president. I'd love to hear how he does it, and when he rests, I don't know. uh, 3 other people. I always enjoy. I always enjoy sitting with my parents at dinner and finding out what it took to get here. Right, like nothing for granted. What did it take? And likewise, the same for my father-in-law, is a very successful businessman. I've often asked him about finances and kind of overextending yourself for risk and risk and reward. And it just blows me away because, we're always in that position where you can take a big step if you want to, just be ready for the outcome or
Right.
fallback. And, some of the things that he's done in the business world really make me think, like, how do you get to that point where you can do that? You got a family and all this. And so I'll tell you those 3. I know there are plenty of others out there, that could definitely lend me a lot more, plenty of intelligence, but, those come to mind right now.
I like it. Did you said your dad was in the Marines? Did he also go to Naval Academy?
He didn't. He went here to ODU, ROTC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other favorite quotes? I actually never heard that Robert E. Lee quote, surprisingly, but you might have brought a new one into my top favorites.
That is, there are plenty. I don't have them at the ready. There are some other things that I've kind of kept with me out of some books. One of them had to do with, hey, here are the behaviors that you need to have to be financially successful, right? To build wealth, right? To move along in the system. And it was very simple. It had something to do with exude kindness, don't be a jerk, and abandon rudeness, like across the board. And I'm thinking, like, how does this apply? Like, this isn't just a corporate thing. This is a walking down the street thing. This is a parking, close next to somebody at the parking lot thing. You're like, and I think I've kind of, self-discovered that I do believe in karma. I mean, it comes back to you 100-fold.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to give everything you have away, but when you can support somebody, when you can sling a compliment somebody's way, their day is going to advance and just improve. A thank you note, it's those things, some leaders write these. I have one right behind me. An admiral wrote it to my wife before I finally came back from Bahrain after my 5th deployment. And, so touching, I was just writing some this week, and I felt good about, hey, I'd love that they're going to get this in a non-traditional way. It's not going to be a text. It's not going to be an email. That's just among others, but it's coming with a stamp. and you're going to understand that I appreciate what you're doing. I'm thankful for our engagement. So um, those are some of the things that I always keep in mind. I kind of I pass them on to my kids. I'm like, hey, you don't have to be rude in this to get, your point across, or hey, how about a little more kindness towards one another? And it might sound a little soft, but those are some guardrails. They really are as you go through your day.
I couldn't agree more. The lost art of snail mail is one of my favorite
Yeah.
ways, but uh, I do need to know, how is it working with your kids?
Yeah, it's like kind of like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's like at the Naval Academy, and it's like, well, how'd the AM shift go? And then we talked about it at lunch. How'd the PM shift go? Well, dinner should be a good wrap up, and then yeah, it's daily. I think they get it. I think it's seeping in, but
I agree. Steady messaging and compounding, hopefully over time. It's the
exactly. Yeah.
anything that you want to share with a transitioning vet that might be listening to this as they're contemplating the next act, or trying to self-discover. Um, Wrap us up with just what worked with you, or anything you want to share.
Yeah, I think well, certainly I would advise getting into a program designed to focus on transition.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the Honor Foundation? Actually, I did want to, like, how does somebody apply to that? And we'll
Yep.
put a, a link in the show notes.
Yeah, perfect. So the Honor Foundation is a nationwide organization. They happen to have a local campus here in Virginia Beach. It's for special operations, so only. And I know there's some other ones for different communities, but this is, Navy SEAL, Navy EOD, Marine Raiders were in there. There's Green Berets. There's, even personnel stationed at Special Operations Command in some regards. We have a lot of that down here at the beach. And there's an online application. You need to get some recommendations, and then they review, and you can join. There are virtual options, and there are in-person options as well.
Awesome.
And as part of that program, you're going to get some self-assessment. You're going to find out what your strongest traits are, and how to leverage those, and then you're going to get exposure to different communities. And it's not just the cohort that matters. I mean, I still participate in their webcast where they say, hey, any alumni want to come in and learn about real estate finance or sports management or something. They have key individuals that come back and put on these fireside chats, so to speak. So I can just dial in from home and listen to what they're talking about.
Oh, that's awesome. What
So
a
it's
resource.
pretty strong network. And they also, there are leads on jobs based on, opportunities in the area. And
That's awesome. All right. Anything else before we close out? Anything we didn't cover that you want to make sure we hit?
I would just admit that, I was, as part of transition, it just forced me to become a bit more humble in what I was capable of doing. Right. And I'll tell you a quick story story. Quanta said, hey, you come from the military. You should be good with acquisitions. And I said, I got to be honest. I got no acquisition experience at all. Not that I couldn't learn it, but I'm just not bringing it with me. And they were like, I appreciate your honesty. Moving on, So, I mean, I was never really good at it. I didn't really understand it too well, but I just wanted to I had to be very honest. Like, I didn't have that skill with me.
Yeah.
And that is something that you discover in this transition period. Like, be humble, understand what you really bring to the table. Not that you can do everything. I would hope you could learn everything over time, but you just don't bring it. You got to focus in on your key traits.
Yeah. Awesome, Dan. Well, thanks so much for taking the time with us. Thanks for sharing your lessons learned, and best of luck at Quanta.
I appreciate it. Thanks, BJ.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying the show or know somebody transitioning off active duty, do us a favor, like, subscribe, shoot this to them in a text. The more that we can spread the word, and folks like Dan and I are available on LinkedIn. We love paying it forward and helping people who are curious about what we're doing now, the companies that we're with, or just jobs in general in the built environment. Till next time, have a great week and a great weekend.